Hello, welcome to Playfully Faithful Parenting. I'm Joy Wenling, and I am so excited to invite you to listen in on a conversation I had with Lydia Rex. And I'm going to introduce her to you in just a minute, but we talk about the Connected Families course, Sensitive and Intense Kids. This is such an incredible course. I have gone through it myself once and led it twice, so gone through it two more times. And every time it has helped me as a parent. It has helped me as a follower of Jesus. And so I'm really excited to share again this conversation because we talk about how the course helps us as parents to sensitive and intense kids. Sometimes some of us are sensitive and intense ourselves. Helps us to love God more, than how to teach who he is and his word to our kids. And then finally, we talk about play in this course. And this is my love, teach, play method that I talk about throughout the podcast. And so we just bring the sensitive and intense kids course through that lens. And it's such a rich conversation. Part of that is because of the wisdom and just the personality that Lydia brings. So Lydia is a registered nurse, a TBRI practitioner, and a parent coach. No stranger to challenges in the parenting journey, Lydia offers empathy, encouragement, and a deep commitment to walking alongside parents with the Connected Families framework. It's her joy to see God's grace healing the hearts of parents and children. Lydia, her husband Kyle, and their two kids live in Iowa, where they enjoy homeschooling, outdoor activities, and reading lots of books. So have a listen as Lydia and I talk about love, teach, play through the Connected Families Sensitive and Intense Kids course.
Hey mamas, this is Playfully Faithful Parenting, and I'm your host, Joy Wenling. I'm a seminary grad and children's and family minister turned stay-at-home mom to my 5 girls. Spiritual parenting is my calling, and it's my passion to help other mamas disciple their kids using the power of play and their own authentic daily walk with Christ. If you're a mama who wants to introduce your kids to Jesus and watch as the Holy Spirit transforms their lives, this is the place for you. I'm so glad you're here. So let's dive in and see how we can partner with God today.
Lydia, welcome. Welcome to Playfully Faithful Parenting. I'm so excited to meet with you today on here.
Yeah, it's so great to catch up. I feel like, this is time with a friend. So
Yes, we actually first started talking about having you on my podcast over 2 years ago at the first gathering. And I haven't made it happen. So I'm so glad we're doing that today.
That's crazy. That seems like so long ago.
I know. But also kind of like yesterday.
Yeah.
Like when I went to the gathering this year, I was like, how has it been 2 years since I've seen these people?
Crazy.
And now another 3 months.
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh.
So Lydia, I am thrilled that we get to talk about the Sensitive and Intense Kids course from Connected Families, which you are one of the hosts of the course. Would you just tell us a little bit about the course and kind of introduce it to the audience?
Yeah. So the Sensitive and Intense Kids course, we really wanted, Lynn has worked with families for a long time and has coached with a lot of families. And, something that we see frequently comes up is like a lot of families have maybe that one kid or maybe a couple of kids that is just a little bit more challenging than the others. And that child may have, a diagnosis, ADHD or something else going on, or they may just have a really intense personality and do require maybe a little bit different of an approach than a lot of times what we're used to. And so, Lynn has just become just passionate about these sensitive and intense kids. And the course, I think, is just an absolute lifeline for those of us who are a sensitive and intense child ourselves, or are parenting, one or more sensitive and or intense kids, and are just finding that, we're hitting some big struggles where, emotional regulation is maybe really hard, or, different things that maybe tend to go a little bit more smoothly for some other kids are a big hurdle for our kids. Maybe, sleep is super, super difficult, or eating, or textures, sensory things going on. I mean, this course, I think, will really, it really kind of opens up a whole big set of insights for families, to really have those aha moments of being like, oh, now things are making a little bit more sense. And so, we talk about some of the very practical sides of raising a sensitive and intense child, like sensory input, and what does it look like to create a sensory diet for your child? What are the best ways that these kiddos can learn well through modeling, through play, things like that. And we dig really deep into the spiritual side of parenting too, which is so, so important, for us as parents, especially parents of sensitive and intense kids. So there's this deep, spiritual depth to it, of really helping to feed parents' souls and fuel them, to approach their kids with love and grace. And then there's all of these practical tools, and not just tools, but a whole bunch of families sharing their stories, and sharing things that have worked for them, and sharing the growth of their family. And so, the course started, I think it ended up a lot bigger than maybe we planned on when we started out. I remember at one point it was like, okay, Lynn, we can't add any more, no more chapters. We have to cut it off. But it is a course that is not like, go through it once. I've been through it a number of times already and recorded the course with Lynn, and I still am picking up new insights, every time through. So it's really a kind of treasure trove of things to put in your parenting, toolbox. So yeah, I could go on and on. Can you tell?
Yeah, absolutely. And I have been through it 3 times myself.
Yeah.
And I remember, I mean, we waited with bated breath for this course. I
Yeah.
mean, hearing Lynn talk about it for so long, and then she just kept going, like you were saying. So we waited for a long time for this course, it felt like. And when I first heard about it, and I was like, oh, this will be great for a lot of the families I know.
Mm-hmm.
And because I know a lot of families who do have a diagnosis, and none
Mm-hmm.
of my kids do, I felt like, well, I don't have a kid that's going to qualify because none of my kids have a diagnosis. But as I started learning more about the course and then watched it, I was like, okay, I do have 2 of these kids.
Aw.
It was so freeing for me as a parent to
Mm-hmm.
know that just because my kid doesn't have a diagnosis doesn't mean that they can't still feel hard, right?
Yes.
I felt
Yep.
like I should be able, especially as a parent coach, I should be able to figure out these kids because they're neurotypical,
Uh-huh.
and I can't go to a doctor and say these are the things that are wrong because it's not as extreme or it's not every day or what all of those things. And I was comparing my
Mm-hmm.
kids to other people's kids, and their kids were so much worse, or they were struggling so much more. So I didn't feel like I could reach out for different help.
Yes, you bring up really one of the things I love most about this course, and that is like it casts a wide umbrella, right? And also, you as a parent, like, you will know and recognize if you've got a sensitive and intense child in your house. And they don't have to have a diagnosis or a way to quantify the fact that we're having a hard time. Sometimes it just is what it is, right? And there's no hoops to jump through. There's no, your child doesn't qualify for, it's like, do you need this? Here it is.
Yes. Yes.
And I think that a lot of us, there's some sensitive and intenseness to most of us in there, right? And I really think that those sensitive and intense kids' insights really help us to connect with a lot of the humanity around us.
Yeah.
Whether or not they're maybe a typical sensitive, intense kid, there's so many insights that I'm sure you find helpful with all of your kids.
Yes.
So.
Yes. They all love like some of the deep pressure exercises. And like my arms go to jello because I'm, doing the same thing, rolling,
Yeah.
one of those rollers on their backs. And then the next one has to do it. And then the next one. And I'm like, I can't do this anymore. Like 5 of you,
Yes.
but they all love it. And it's helpful to all of them. And sometimes I just want to say, okay, but only this one really needs it. So she gets 3 minutes and you get 1 minute,
Oh,
but
so funny.
yes. Oh, that deep pressure is,
It is. It's there's so many I think just sensory insights that are really helpful for all of us.
yeah.
And I really enjoyed that in the course as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I have a method that I like to teach to parents to disciple their kids that I call the love, teach, play method based on Deuteronomy 6 verses 4 through 9. And just talking about and teaching parents that it starts with us loving God first. Then we teach our kids at home, on the road, going to bed, when we get up. And then finally, then we play with our kids because that models like Psalm 16:11 talks about in his presence is abundant joy. John 10:10, Jesus talks about the abundant life that he offers us. And then most families, if they're like mine, when we're at home in the car, going to bed and waking up, we are playing and wanting to be playful anyhow. And so adding discipleship into all of that.
Yes.
So I think this course fits that discipleship method really well. So I just want to dig into each of those with the course and kind of talk about how to start. How does this course help us as parents to love God more?
Yeah. I think that one thing that I hope comes through loud and clear in this course, and I know it did to me when I, went through the course as a parent, is just God's deep love and compassion for us. His knowing of us and how we're formed. And, we love because he first loved us, right? And so getting in touch with that, oh my goodness, God's not sitting up there disapproving of me and my squirrely little kiddo down here. He's loving us so deeply. He's having so much compassion for us in the tough moments. He's right here with us. I think that, that helped me to see God how he truly is with us. And there is a verse in Hosea where it says, I led them with cords of human kindness, with ties of love. Doesn't say I gave them great techniques and helped them get their behavior in line, right? No, it's kindness, it's love. And I think that as parents, like, hear about that and feel that from the Lord, that's what then leads us into being able to teach our kids effectively in a way that connects with their heart, that isn't just about behavior.
Yeah. Yeah. And this course was the first course to have specific videos, right? For parents, the soul care videos.
So that was Stacy's idea. Stacy was like, I think we need another little something special for parents. And what do you guys think about, we'll do some soul care videos. And this was Stacy's brainchild. And Lynn and I were like, oh, we love it. And it really became very central to the course, I think, because every single, section of the course has a corresponding soul care video for parents where we, talk through some scripture and just help parents to get in touch with how God feels about them and their kids and
Yeah.
how that relates to each piece of what we're teaching in the course. So that really turned out to be a huge favorite, and we have Stacy to thank for that. So yeah.
Yes, yes. And that ties in with the connected families, the beginning of their core messages of you are safe and the foundation, right?
Yes. Yes, that foundation, we really can't send this message of you're safe with me unless we have that strong foundation with the Lord, because you're safe with me really means I'm okay even if, your behavior is kind of crazy right now. I'm okay even if, you're not okay right now.
Yeah.
And for us to be able to have that solid peace with the Lord, like that comes from knowing who he is and how he feels about us and our kids. I think of we had a moment on a vacation. We were visiting my dad. One of my little ones had one of the worst meltdowns I had seen in years, and I remember what it felt like to have my dad there. He wasn't doing anything, he wasn't jumping in, but my dad was there. And I knew how much he loved me and he loved my child and was just rooting for us. And I think, like, oh, that's what we have from the Lord in such an even bigger way. And for parents to start realizing that we have that Father who is loving us so much, even in our worst moments, that gives us this immense foundation of peace then to be able to walk through the difficult moments with our kids.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that is such a beautiful picture. And I know of your dad. And I know not everybody has that feeling with their parents. Um,
Oh, yeah. I mean, and think about families who've got a sensitive and intense kids. So often, those families are used to the disapproval, the judgments, the maybe well meaning advice that doesn't really fit their child. And so instead of having that steady, loving presence, in their lives, they have the opposite. And, another thing I hope from this course too is that families just learn, hey, you're not alone. And there are other families out here doing this work. And I think too, it's really, I know you've done small groups with the course. I've seen families really come around each other through that too, in just finding like, hey, here are some people that can offer that love and support to us. So
yes. Yes.
yeah.
Being, I was a sensitive kid myself
Mm-hmm.
and thinking like, I know my parents did the best they could,
Yes.
but if I had someone who let me express my feelings as a kid, who let me to be big and then learn how to process that,
Mm-hmm.
um, could have been, you know, so different for me. But God has been so faithful to bring
Yes.
things since then. But it just that when we can kind of help our kids by allowing God to love us and heal us through that.
Yes.
Yeah,
I don't think there's anything better you can do for your child
right.
than to let God love you and
Yeah.
heal you. And that will directly flow through you to your child. That trickle down effect of that healing and grace it's it's truly incredible.
Yeah.
So
And then
yeah.
your kids also, as they see you growing and God working on you and you modeling what it looks like to love God even when you're having your own big moments,
Yep.
that is a form of teaching, which is the
Yeah.
next part of the love teach play is, Deuteronomy 6 talks about memorizing, like keeping God's word in your own heart and then talking about it with your kids and teaching your kids. And
Yeah.
sometimes we teach that through conversations, but sometimes we teach it through our actions.
Mm-hmm.
So, how do you think this course would help parents to disciple their kids? and teach their kids about who God is and the way he loves us and designed us.
Yeah. I think a really big place to start is identity, right? Because we talk a lot about the messages our kids get, and sensitive and intense kids easily get negative messages, spoken or unspoken, from us, from teachers, from siblings. What are some of those common messages that sensitive and intense kids might get? You're a problem. You're exhausting. You're having a hard time with things that are easy for other people. These things are not things that are maybe being said, but these are messages that they're receiving,
Right.
sometimes just overwhelmingly.
Mm.
And I think as this course helps us to kind of change our lens as parents, it helps us to be intentional and send those messages of like, you're God's masterpiece. You have strengths and weaknesses like everybody else, including me, right? We're learning together. We're learning to use those incredible gifts that God gave you. We're learning how to take care of the amazing brain and body God gave you. You know, having sensory sensitivities, having an intense personality, that's not bad. It's good. It's good. And I think that um, we automatically think that different or more challenging is bad sometimes, or our kids do. And to start really cultivating in them this like, God made you in this kind of way and it's good. There are good things about that is just an incredible gift to our kids and leads into so much of that building capability, helping them develop the gifts that God gave them in all kinds of ways that we talk about in the course, right? I was reading in Hebrews 11 and something stuck out to me that I had never noticed before a couple of months ago. It's the faith chapter, right? And it talks about Moses' parents. By faith, Moses' parents, they hid him for 3 months after he was born because they saw he was no ordinary child. Okay,
Mm.
another translation would say, because they saw he was a beautiful child and they were not afraid. And that stuck out to me because I'm like, it takes faith sometimes to see the beautiful child in front of us and to parent out of faith and not out of fear. And I think that's a big piece of what we're getting into in this course. And I don't know, that makes me really excited. I'm like, hey, Moses' parents got mentioned in the Bible for that.
Yes.
That
Well,
was
and
really cool.
yes, and also that just made me think that sometimes for my child, staying home is a better choice.
Yes.
So,
They're done for.
sometimes not being out in public is a better, safer choice for my child. And
Mhm.
that is not necessarily hiding out of fear, but
Yeah.
hiding out of knowing that God has something more for my child.
Mm, yeah. Yes. Like believing that God has great purposes and plans for this child. And I can trust him through that. And the way that this child isn't a problem. It's part of the picture that you got his painting here. And it might be a little messy at times. That's okay.
Moses did kill someone. I mean,
Yes, Moses, a lot of our favorite biblical characters really had some colorful moments.
yes, yes.
Yeah. And, you know, God doesn't look at what people look at. People look at, is your child well behaved? Do they obey immediately? Are they, is everything that comes out of their mouth respectful? The Lord looks at the heart, and boy, that's a perspective shift for us as parents and a
Right.
perspective shift to give to our kids as well. Like, I care more, God cares more about what's going on in your heart. And so we're going to prioritize that first and trust that, we can also learn the respectfulness, the kind actions, that all is going to come too. But what's most important
Right.
is your heart.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And not I know as a child that behaving often felt like a sacrifice. Like
Mm-hmm.
I was sacrificing who I was
Yeah.
to behave, right? Or to look a certain way or to fit in to a
Mm-hmm.
certain group and God also says he doesn't care about our sacrifices in that way. That's not
Yeah.
what he's after.
Yeah.
And I think often our kids have to sacrifice who they are to
Mhm.
fit in our obedience boxes.
Yep. Yeah. Hmm. Yeah. And so I think, this course is going to give parents a lot of maybe new ideas or new thoughts when it comes to the idea of teaching our kids. um, it can look very different and it can be really effective a lot of times when it looks really different.
Yeah.
So I hope that it's something that is as refreshing to parents as it has been for me, to just be like, oh, wait a minute. It's not my job to make sure this certain outcome happens right away. It's
Right.
my job to build wisdom. And sometimes that's a slow road. But boy, is it a joy
Yeah.
to start to see those little fruits. Yeah.
Yeah. And I know that it has been impactful of my own identity as well, you know? And so going back to that loving God and letting him love me,
Yeah.
it does it when we can see those things in our kids, and we're like, oh,
Mhm.
I wish someone saw that in me as a kid. And then you're like, oh yeah, God did. God does.
Yeah. I think sometimes it can be really healing for parents
Yeah.
to start to see these things in their kids and then they realize, oh, that was also me. Or wait a minute, I never thought of myself as a child like this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And okay, so my favorite part is play.
Yes.
And this has a whole section on play, and it's not your typical play. So
Mhm.
tell us about play and the impact of that in the course and what that looks like for our parenting.
Yeah. Well, the first thing I would say is like everything we've been talking about already comes into this topic of play, right? Because play requires us to have a steady foundation so that we can be lighthearted, so that we can be confident. I remember reading Philippians 1 where it said, where Paul is saying, whenever I pray for you, I pray with joy. And then he goes on to say, I'm confident that he who started a good work in you is going to carry it on to completion. And I thought, I wonder if I replace the word pray with parent.
Mm.
You know, boy, that's really a thought for me. If I think of my kids and I think I want to be able to just always parent with joy because I'm confident that God started something good here and he's gonna finish it. He cares even more than I do about my kids and all of their strengths and weaknesses. He's way more invested than even I am, right? And so having that confidence, I think allows us to, instead of panicking about every little thing or like feeling like we got to control this misbehavior or that thing, it allows us to be like, we're on this journey with the Lord. I
Mm.
can have a light heart. I can be confident. And that often helps us to walk into play a lot more naturally. So I don't ever want parents to be like, I gotta play more. It comes from that foundation, that lightheartedness, that confidence that God is growing in us. But then lots of practical ideas to kind of get the wheels turning for parents in this course. And we talk about, I think it's always a win anytime we can add playfulness to anything that we're doing with our kids, right? It is
Yes.
a automatic, you know, gold, gold moment with our kids when we can bring some playfulness in. And sometimes that's as simple as a wink or a silly face or saying something really goofy and off the wall or, a dad joke. Sometimes that's all it takes to bring a little playfulness into the homework or whatever is going on. But then on a bit more of a therapeutic level, we talk about specific types of play like the power reversal play, or the um, like the symbolic play where you're playing something out with stuffed animals or something like that. And there are some certain types of play that can be really therapeutic, really helpful for kids with specific struggles. So I love to pull out that power reversal play, especially with a sensitive and intense younger child who has perhaps an older sibling who kind of seems to have their life in hand. For that younger child to get some healthy, playful feelings of power is so helpful and such a win for parents and kids. So lots of ideas like that. And then I think just kind of the playful attitude throughout, the lighthearted attitude throughout is also big.
Yes, yes. So, really quick story on kind of that power reversal. Last night at dinner, one of my kids took her plate from the table and put it on the counter without being asked, which doesn't always happen. And so I gave her a high five and did that. Oh, ouch. Like she's really strong. That hurt my hand. Then another kid started grabbing dishes and she wanted to give me a high five and she wanted that response. And then people were like, they started clearing plates that people were still eating off of just because they wanted that powerful high five.
Yes.
They wanted to feel the power of hurting mom's hand in a high five. And I mean, every dish, just kept going because they wanted another high five. And it was fun. It was silly. We were all laughing. We were connecting. And the
Yes.
table got cleared.
And the table got cleared. The thing I love about play, and I remember coaching one family, large family, super, super busy, like they had a lot on their plate. And I could tell when I introduced the idea of playfulness to mom and dad, they were like, you have got to be kidding me right now. But I got them to try it anyway. And they came back to their next session and they were like, yeah, bedtime's been a non-issue. Because we've been racing, we've been doing this or that. And one of them was like, and you know what? I just have noticed that like I feel more like happy and excited about bedtime, or like it makes life easier somehow, even for me. And I was like, oh, so see, you're all feeling the benefits of that playfulness. And it's totally a boost for us parents when we get our kiddos giggling about something, when we have that connection. It is like mutual tank filling that
Yes.
happens when you have those playful moments. So
Yeah.
and it doesn't have to be complicated. It can be the silly high fives. That's all it took. And like that can change the atmosphere of your after dinner commotion just like that.
Absolutely. Yeah. And you
Yeah.
do have to know your kids because my kids would not like to race. That feels like pressure, and then there's a loser. And so you really have to kind of trial and error and be
Yeah.
okay making a mistake.
Yes.
Just kind of say, okay, we won't do that kind of play next time. Let's try something else.
Yep. Yeah. And the same with any of the things in this course. Maybe it's a sensory strategy that you're working on, or maybe it's a coaching strategy you're working on to build capability. There are going to be some things that are going to just kind of fall flat. That's okay.
Yeah.
That's okay. We'll try something different. There's so much room for that kind of learning. What is it that makes both you and your child tick
Yes.
together? Yeah.
Yeah. And even some things that work some days may not work on other days. I know when I first went through this course, we were talking about, we had Lynn with us, and we were talking about sounds, I think. And one of my girls was having a really hard day. And so we live on an island. So I drove her to a beach and it was raining. So we couldn't get out of the car, but we rolled down the windows and we just listened to the beach. We listened to the waves and there were seagulls.
Oh, that sounds wonderful.
Yes. And so we now visit this beach quite often when she's having a hard time and it works for our schedules. But when it doesn't, we put on ocean music and it has helped not every meltdown, but it has helped quite a few meltdowns. And especially if we can catch it early.
Yep.
If we catch it, if it's too late, then she doesn't want that because she knows, like, because then I think it feels like a manipulation.
Yes.
Which isn't what it's intended to do, but that's how it feels to her. But if we can
Yep.
get in there early and I could put on, some wave music, then
Yep.
it's so helpful. But she will some days just say, I don't feel good. Can we go to my beach? And just
Oh,
knows what helps her
yeah.
and has gotten really good at like being okay with, okay, but only for 5 minutes.
Hmm.
And she will, because she knows, like we've said yes, and but we had to put a boundary on it. And if she listens, then we'll be able to do it more and more, even if it's just for a short time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you're kind of working into that idea of a just right challenge, which is something that's really big in this course too, is like, um, sometimes our kiddos aren't going to be quite ready for this big of a challenge. But like, because I imagine if you, when you first started this, it might have been tough to be like, okay, but we just for 5 minutes,
Yeah.
right?
That would not have
Now
gone over.
this is a helpful strategy for her. Now she can maybe stretch a little bit more and we can be like, hey, we just have 5 minutes, and she's okay with that. That maybe wouldn't have been the case right off the bat. And
Right.
so often when we start, like, we just got to start small. We got to start working with the abilities that our kids are showing us, and then we can grow their skills, grow their, their tolerance to some of the stressful things of life that are just reality.
Yeah.
And Yeah, I love how you did that. And I just think too, like, imagine her growing up, right? And having those memories of when I was having a hard time, mom would take me to the beach and we'd listen to the ocean. And what a like comforting thought that's going to be to her even as a grown up. That's so sweet.
And she can now hear like and recognize beach sounds, like ocean sounds in the background if it's like almost anywhere, like, like the back of an app, like playing in the background of an app. She's like, I hear ocean. And I'm like, yeah. And so it's just become something that she can own too. Like that, giving her the skills to know what helps her. And at the beginning of the school year, her teacher um, had them filling out these forms, and it said, what things make your body feel good? And she wrote ocean sounds.
Ocean sounds. Yeah. So good. And I love to just this attitude we're cultivating with our kids of like, sometimes our brains and bodies need a little bit of a break. It's important to take good care of what God gave us here. And it's not like, oh, go listen to your ocean sound so you can calm down. It's like, what does your body need right now? And that helps take the shame out of, because so many of our intense kiddos have shame about their intenseness that they could never put into words, especially the ones who are younger. But helping them learn to accept and love, their brains and bodies in some tangible ways. And to know that, like, that's part of God's heart for us. Like he put us in this beautiful world full of sensory things for a reason. We could be living in two-dimension black and white, but we're not. Um, and I think, just recognizing that and the way that God cares for us in the world that he made, and learning how to find those things that are helpful for us. This is going to make her a more patient mom someday because she knows, what's going to help when she's having a tough time. This is going to help her, be more accepting of her kids' big emotions. And I just get excited about, what this is going to do for our kids as they grow up. Because again, like you, I didn't necessarily have that growing up. And I know you and I both know the road in motherhood can sometimes be rocky when you're still figuring out your own self.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. And it has been really powerful for her too, to also, when we started, it was mostly those times when she was having big emotions. But now we try to get to that beach every couple of weeks, just
Mhm.
because it makes her body feel good, even if she's not dysregulated, right?
Yeah.
And just, but it was something that I learned through the course, and it was just this trial and error. Let's get out of the house. You need connection right now. You're having a hard time. We could
Mhm.
do it. And we
Yeah.
just happened upon, this
Yep.
really being something that helped her. And so,
You know
yeah.
what? This is funny. My son, one of my son's things right now that my husband has discovered is taking the car for a car wash. We don't have any ocean here in Iowa. We have a car wash. I
Yes.
think the noisiness of it, and he likes to help vacuum, and like when he comes back from going to wash the car with dad, like that's very regulating for him. And it's not something that we do like, oh, we're having a rough day, better wash the car. But it's like it's just kind of part of that diet of like caring for ourselves well. And
Yes.
having a cleaner car always a good thing.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, Lydia, this has been an amazing conversation, and I would love for you to tell the listeners like more about how they can take this course.
Yeah. So we offer the course. You can just purchase and go through the course on your own, but we also really encourage you to try going through a small group with the course. And so if you go to the Connected Families webpage, which I'm assuming you'll put all that kind of stuff in the show notes, on the events page, you can find any upcoming small groups. You can also go to our resources and check out just an individual purchase of the Sensitive and Intense Kids course. If you're kind of just like starting to dip your toes into this idea of sensitive and intense kids, another thing I would recommend is just going to the search bar on the Connected Families webpage and type in sensitive and intense. It will bring up some of our podcasts and articles and things that will kind of just whet your appetite a little bit and help you see if this is something that maybe could be key for your family.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. Any last encouragement for the moms?
One encouragement that I would give is just something that gets me really excited about sensitive and intense kids is all of the amazing things that God put in them. So when I coach families, I have them fill out a form ahead of time that talks about, what's going on with your family and what are some of the struggles. And one question we ask is what does your child do well? And families who have a sensitive and intense child, it's almost across the board that they fill that out and they start talking about, oh, this child is so compassionate. They are so quick to forgive. They are incredibly creative. And, a sensitive and intense child is often more challenging in this stage of parenting. Also, look at some of God's sensitive and intense kids in the Bible. Man, did they have some dramatic moments. And so to even realize and accept that, like, we may have a bit of a roller coaster with this child, and maybe that's okay, because over the long haul, what God is doing in this child and in us as parents is absolutely amazing. And I've gotten just the privilege of seeing some sensitive, intense kids get a little bit older and hearing stories from their parents. And I just had a family the other day tell me the sweetest story about their really intense kiddo and his little brother, and just how this child was guiding his little brother with so much grace and gentleness. And it's just stunning to see that even in the midst of all of the messy, challenging moments, are these absolute masterpieces that God has entrusted to us. And that's exciting as a parent when you start to glimpse that, when you start to realize, whoa, God's doing something really, really good here.
Yeah. Oh, beautiful. Thank you, Lydia. I just love chatting with you and talking about this course. The last thing I want to know that I ask all my guests is, Lydia, how do you like to play?
I've been playing the same way since I was a little kid. I love to read, absolutely love to read. Really good quality fiction is my jam. My grandparents, when they used to come visit, they would not give me the books that they brought for a present until the end of their visit because they knew that if they handed those books over, I was going to disappear. So I still love to get lost in a book. That's one of my favorite ways to play.
That's awesome. Me too. Yeah, love to read. Though I'm more of a nonfiction reader, but
Yes,
yes.
I'm a big fiction reader. I read nonfiction too, but when I want to play, it's fiction.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you so much for being a guest here on Playfully Faithful Parenting. And is there a way that you want to encourage parents to reach out to you or follow you on social media?
I do have I have an Instagram account. I can send that to you to put in show notes. I'm not on there very often. So really just following Connected Families and the podcast. That's probably where you'll see me from time to time. But always love when parents reach out on Instagram or email or whatever. So yeah.
Great. Thank you so much, Lydia. This has been a pleasure.
Thanks, Joy.
Well, mamas, that's it for today. Thanks for joining me on Playfully Faithful Parenting. I'd love to keep the conversation going over on the socials. You can find me on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. If you felt encouraged or equipped by today's show, do me a favor and leave a review. I can't wait to hear your story. Till next week, keep playing and pointing those littles to Christ.